The attorney representing Stormy Daniels, the porn star embroiled in controversy after alleging a sexual tryst with Donald Trump and allegations of attempts to buy her silence on the matter, has filed a motion in federal court seeking to depose the president and his lawyer, Michael Cohen, in the matter. How likely is that to happen, and how does it change the case one way or another? We'll talk about that more with Bob Driscoll. He's a former Deputy Assistant Attorney General appointed during the George W. Bush administration and is presently a member of the McGlinchey Stafford law firm. Thank you for coming, Bob.
Thank you, Larry.
Okay, the attorney for Stormy Daniels, he's asked a federal judge to allow him to depose the president and his attorney. You think that'll go through?
Well, I mean, certainly based on the Clinton case, the precedent is set that the president can be deposed in a civil matter while he is president of the United States. I think the bigger hurdle he has is to whether or not the president is a necessary witness to his case. Because right now his case isn't about whether the president had an affair or not. His case is about this confidentiality agreement he set up with Michael Cohen, or that Stormy Daniels set up with Michael Cohen. And so whether or not the president, whether or not that'll be relevant to the president's testimony is what a court will eventually have to decide. I think that's a bigger hurdle than whether the president can be deposed at all, because I think it's pretty clear that he could be if it were justified.
Was her interview on 60 Minutes significant?
I don't think it really advanced the ball that much, frankly. I think that clearly her attorney is on TV a lot and getting a lot of traction. And it looks to me like what he's trying to do and what she's trying to do is bait the president into denying that they had a relationship so that they can sue the president for libel, for essentially calling her a liar. And right now the president is remaining silent. It looks like one time where he's actually listening to his lawyers, probably smartly, by not saying anything about it.
In his filing, her attorney said it is firmly established that a sitting president is not afforded special protection from a civil suit. Regarding conduct before he entered office, he cited Clinton versus Jones. Right. You agree?
That's basically true. I mean, I think the president gets some special consideration. The court's instructed in that case you have to balance the fact that the president is president and is going to have timing restrictions, and you want to make sure it doesn't run wild in terms of length. But in terms of the basic principle that after Clinton v. Jones, the president indeed can be deposed in a civil lawsuit about conduct that occurred before he was president.
Donald Trump's signature doesn't appear on the now infamous non-disclosure agreement. Is that legally significant to Mr. Trump or to her?
I'm not positive it is, because it's pretty clear that Cohen, or at least there'd be a pretty good argument that Cohen's acting as his agent in that case. And the pseudonym for Donald Trump, I guess they used the initials DD in the agreement, are in there. And so where not his signature, I think it may have been authorized or signed by his authorized representative. It puts the president in a little bit of a difficult situation because on the one hand, he's not a signatory to that agreement. But on the other hand, my understanding is his personal lawyers are trying to enforce the agreement in an arbitration proceeding in California to make sure that Stormy Daniels, doesn't talk any further. So it's kind of odd. In one instance, they're saying he's not a signatory to the agreement. In another instance, they're trying to enforce the agreement that he's not a signatory to, which, sometimes in the law we get things a little crazy, and I think his lawyers have kind of tied themselves up on that one.
Where do you think all this is going?
It's hard to say. I don't think it matters on the political front. I think that most voters kind of had a certain view of the president, and that view wasn't inconsistent necessarily with what we're hearing about, even if Stormy Daniels or the other woman are to be believed. I think most voters took that into account. And so I think what's happening is you've got something that's politically or kind of entertainment-wise a little bit of a scandal, and you can see his lawyers trying to manufacture a legal hook into that, but it's not quite there yet. And so I think they're trying to keep it alive longer. So I think that, really the question is, does this turn into a legal hook where, you could get the president under oath and ask him direct questions, and then you're in a Clinton situation where if the president lies, there can be a problem. So I think that right now, it seems like most people probably believe the women. Most people probably understand that the president's denying it because he's a married man and isn't going to admit it, and most people are willing to let that go. But the question is, can this be manufactured into a legal dispute by her attorney?
All right, the New York Times reported on Wednesday that a Trump lawyer floated the idea of pardons for Paul Manafort and Michael Flynn. The proposal suggests the president's attorneys were concerned about what Flynn and Manafort might reveal to the special counsel. Do you see that happening? And by the way, if he does pardon them, does that mean they can't testify for the counsel?
It doesn't necessarily mean that they wouldn't have to testify. It would depend on the circumstances. Yeah, I saw that report, and it would obviously, there'd be some incentive to pardon them in terms of to give them incentive not to cooperate with the special counsel. I think now that both have pled guilty and have probably likely said what they're going to say to the special counsel, I don't think pardoning them would necessarily help the president too much as it would help them if the president thinks they were wrongfully charged or that the charges were trumped up. But the reason you would pardon them before they pled guilty would be to keep them in the posture of don't cooperate, don't say what you know. And it's unclear. I think the White House denies that, or at least Sarah Huckabee Sanders denied that from the podium, that Dowd had those conversations. But certainly it's big news if he did, because obviously the president would not just be pardoning political allies of his, he'd be pardoning people who are witnesses in the very investigation that the president is under scrutiny in.
What appears to you to be a bigger threat to him, Stormy or Mueller?
Oh, I think Mueller by far. I mean, Stormy at the end of the day is a civil suit, at the bottom of which, maybe she proves that they had a relationship. I think most people wouldn't be knocked over if that were the case. I think Mueller is a bigger risk because he's got, I think the president, one thing he's been clear on is the president is loyal to his family. I think Mueller's got his family in the crosshairs. She's got the president in the crosshairs. And, while I haven't seen the evidence yet and that there's anything there yet, when you get people under oath and they give conflicting testimony, there can always be a problem. There's a lot of risk involved. So I think that, Mueller's got a top flight team of prosecutors, and you have to handle it with caution, even if you are innocent, as the president maintains he is. But the president also has a hard time sometimes controlling his impulses. And so his interview with Mueller, if he has one, would be, I think fraught with a little bit of peril for whoever is his attorney at the time.
One other thing, in another area, the president's proposing a change in the 2020 census.
Right.
To ask people if they are citizens.
Right.
What do you make of that?
Well, I think the impacts are more political than anything else, and I think that folks are concerned. I think the Democrats in particular are concerned that having that question will dissuade people from responding to the census, and we won't get a full count, particularly of non-citizens. The census requires that all residents be counted, whether they're citizens or not. And the question now would disclose whether or not you are or aren't a citizen. Now that information can't technically be shared with anyone, and so people should be willing to fill it out. But I think that the fear is that people won't. I tend to think it's good information to have, and the reality is the census asks a lot of intrusive questions. It asks how many people are living in your house. You may be violating your lease. It asks how many bathrooms you have. It asks your race. It asks all kinds of things. And I tend to think that people that would be afraid to interact with the census worker just aren't going to answer the door, aren't going to fill out the form at all. I don't think they're going to wait to get to question 5 and then decide they're not filling it out. So I'm not confident how much of an effect it will really have, but I think the concern is that there'll be an undercount of non-citizens. And obviously for redistricting purposes and voting rights purposes and allocation of resources, you need that information.
Bob, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Larry.